Živijo, tukaj je Anže, poslušate podcast Aparatus, kjer legitimni člani družbe povejo, kaj počnejo v življenju.
Stroške gostovanja, spletne strani in vseh fajlov Aparatusa tokrat sponzorira podjetje Design, ki se ukvarja z industrijskim in grafičnim oblikovanjem ter oglaševanjem in je na internetu na www.de/sigen.si. Sicer pa je Aparatus trg že leto dni in je v tem času z odzivom sogovornikom in kar je še bolj pomembno, vrst poslušalcev presegel vsa moja pričakovanja, tako da vse skupaj še z večjim veseljem počnem. Tako da sem tudi na urgiranje nekaterih poslušalcev omogočil, da lahko tudi vi pomagate Aparatusu direktno, ker sponzorji ne morejo vsega pokriti. Te intervjuji pa pač terjajo svoj cajt in jaz sem samo en model z mikrofonom in računalnikom. Tako da, če bi radi pomagali Aparatusu, greste lahko na aparatus.si/podpri, link bo tudi v vseh postih. In če imate možnosti, pač podprite Aparatus, ker bom tako lahko še več truda in cajta vložil v sajt, v intervjuje in v vse ostalo. Tako da, če imate možnost, aparatus.si/podpri. Hvala.
Tole pa je 42. epizoda Aparatusa, ki je že spet v angleščini. Tokrat sem govoril z Zacom Cichyjem, ki je soavtor podcasta The Menu Bar, ki ga dela z enim Avstralcem, ki sliši na ime Andrew J. Clark. Ona dva se dobita vsako soboto, zato ker Zac je Američan, Andrew je pa Avstralc, tako da se morata v soboto dobiti, da sta lahko oba dva po konc. V bistvu pijeta, Zac zmeram vodo, Andrew zmeram nekaj brutalno alkoholnega in se pogovarjata o tehnologiji, življenju in še čemu. Jaz njih dva sam prek Twitterja poznam in se tam non-stop zajebavam in sem pa rekel, da je pridite še k meni na podcast, sta oba dva rekla ja, tako da zdaj le bom Zaca dal tudi v Aparatus feed. Pogovarjala sva se pa o marsičemu, sam to bom rekel. Tako da ja, evo, tole je Zac. That's insane, basically, but yeah. I'm on a Windows machine anyway, so, you know.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Well, I've built every PC I've ever owned, basically.
Okay.
So I'm one of those guys.
Yeah, pre 2010, I was still a hardcore Windows guy, so I totally understand.
Yeah, I gave up on laptops basically because I need a desktop and then a tablet. That's my thing, and a phone. So if I'm not gonna buy, if it was a laptop, I'd buy an Air or something on a MacBook Pro, right? But
right.
If it's a desktop, the Mac Pros are ridiculous, basically. And, I can build something myself that's like a third of the cost with the same specs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really only became interested in Macs once I got a pretty good paying job, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that's another thing, yeah. The prices over here are insane.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
They're probably quite a bit higher than the US, huh?
Yes, let's say quite a bit.
Geez.
Yeah, let's use that vernacular. Yeah, it's gotten better because the prices are sort of the same, but Apple just translates dollars into euros for whatever reason, which, that's not fair.
No, it's definitely not fair, but there's all kinds of crazy reasons, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure it makes sense in some accounting office, in Cupertino, that makes perfect sense. But in the real world, it just makes, it
would be nice if there was some parity for sure.
Yeah, because, every person I know that has an Air, like the new ones, or a Retina MacBook Pro, basically went to the States and bought one there. I don't know if anybody actually bought one here, so... Yeah.
Might as well just take a vacation.
Yeah.
Buy one while you're here.
Just, pop to New York and buy a MacBook Pro, basically.
That's pretty bad if that's how different the prices are.
Yeah, well, if just that whole €1 is the same as $1, that's enough. I mean,
right.
You can bring it over, or if you have a friend that can bring it over, that's enough, basically.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, that's how I got my Nexus 4. A friend brought it over from the States. And
how are you liking that phone?
It is the first Android phone that's good.
Wow.
Not just it's actually good. It's a proper phone. I know.
My brother just recently got one of those, and he's been really, really happy with it.
Yeah, it's like I write for a tech magazine, and my recommendation was the iPhone for a long time. And now, when people ask me, the first question is, do you use Gmail a lot? And
Right.
like if the answer is yes, it's kind of been the Nexus 4 for the last 4 months or something.
Sure. Yeah. I'm pretty much just an Apple guy these days, but I can definitely see that there's certain advantages, to if you're a Gmail user or if you're a heavy Google services user.
Yeah, it actually pays off now, because before it really didn't. But with this phone, it kind of got to a point where it made sense, basically. And I review weird Chinese Android phones. So I know the full spectrum of what can be done when you just give away your operating system. Basically, I know everything that can happen, and the Nexus 4 is it's a legit phone. It's a proper phone.
I'm always kind of skeptical of Google and Android in general, but I am really excited to see. I guess whatever the next moves are, because they clearly are interested in getting deeper and deeper with hardware integration. It's hardware software integration. The Moto X sounds interesting. Yeah. I don't think I'll buy one, but it certainly sounds interesting.
Okay, I think we already started. So just
sure.
I'm going to ask you my first question, and then we'll go right back to that. So, people know, who we are, basically. So, okay, so I just need to ask my first question. Who are you and what do you do?
I am at Zac Cichy. I'm Zac Cichy. I tend to refer to myself as my Twitter handle these days, but, I do a podcast called The Menu Bar with Andrew J. Clark. We record every Friday and we release every Monday. And I also have a day job, but that's not that interesting. It's boring.
No, but what do you do actually? At least tell me your field. Yeah,
well, right now it's really boring because I was fired a few months ago. So
there's a lot of that going around, trust me. So
right. I was working in I was actually working for a data center in downtown Seattle. Mm-hmm. So it was a big web host. I actually can't say too much about it.
Okay.
But yeah, I was basically just doing server maintenance and kind of NOC staff type work with some light admin type stuff.
Oh, okay. A data center.
So that's right. Yeah, I was, the data center stuff. It's always it's pretty much it's similar across the board with different internal systems and different ways of doing things.
Well, that's you see that was broad enough so people know, but you didn't give away too much there. So okay,
sure,
so we're gonna go back to the whole Android thing because that's basically what I wanted to talk to you about because you're one of those guys that kind of
I'm one of those guys.
No. But let me qualify that because that was supposed to be a compliment. But you're one of those guys that's you sort of like Apple, right?
Yeah,
but,
I mean, I'll even go on record and say I'm biased and have a horse in the race. I would say in terms of technology, and that's not something that typically even people who really like Apple. People that I know tend to try to stay away from saying things like that. But for me, I don't see the point in being in the closet about the things that I like. And for me, it is kind of, it's the products and B, it's, the philosophy that drives the products. It's the whole thing. It's not just any one aspect, at the end of the day, I guess for me, it's all about apps,
Yeah.
But it's also about, well, how is this company that I'm giving money to, how are they making money and what does that mean? And, and this is not how people typically think about, their technology purchases, but it's kind of the way that I do.
Yeah, you see, you guys touched on that on the last episode of the Menu Bar with Tichy, right?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, and I listened to that, and the one area, I guess, where I have a problem with that whole, Apple kind of doing stuff just for the good of mankind, basically.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's always hyperbole. When it's a public company, right, that's always hyperbole. That can't be true. Just because of the nature of like a public corporation and the nature of, even if I sound really like European socialist now, like capitalism, just the nature of the whole system. When you say a company that's as big as that just does stuff, for the greater good, can't be true. Like it can't. That's where I'm coming from. So that's actually one of the things I wanted to ask you, because you guys made it sound like, you made peace with that statement in your head. And I want you to expand on it. Like how do you, how do those pieces fit without, your head exploding, basically?
Sure.
Yeah.
How do I sleep at night?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
No, that's a great question. So, I guess, so yeah, basically, so you believe that, ultimately, large companies, capitalist society, all that, ultimately companies are about making money. Like that's the bottom line.
Well, yeah, just let me expand a little, because it's not that one dimensional with me. I actually get that, and that's not a problem per se. The thing is that the whole system, is built so that not a hell of a lot more can be done around that. Like, I get that there are better companies and worse companies in that system, but the whole system kind of prevents, that whole, the greater good strategy, basically.
Sure. So I tend to look at what is the actual impact in the world from whatever company that we're talking about. In the case of Apple, they just, particularly in the sort of 2.0 era, they just don't act like other companies. They don't go around doing the things that big tech companies typically did before they, had their meteoric rise, starting with the iPod, or I guess the iMac, then the iPod, and the iPhone, and the iPad. You get the idea. Yeah. But so they certainly don't act the way that Microsoft did in the 90s, where you're talking about just basically, well, I guess that's not even quite accurate. I think Microsoft in the 90s, they didn't have any competition, Apple certainly wasn't doing anything. They were pretty much riding the success of the late 80s and sort of slightly iterating on that and building on it and doing some diversionary stuff like the Newton, and then Microsoft came out with Windows 95, and the rest is history. There was no one really who was ready, I guess, for the oncoming internet age, But as far as Apple and why it is that they're different, it just comes through in the products and the ecosystems that get developed around the products that they build. You look at the App Store today, and the way that developers, despite the fact that Android has lots more market share, developers still tend to develop for iOS first, and most of the really interesting developments in app development and software, tend to happen on iOS. And this isn't just true of app development. It's also true, I guess, of cultural creatives have always been drawn to Apple. And yeah. I've always found that interesting, and the fact that Apple, they don't just care about any one thing. It's not just the software. It's not just the hardware. It's also other things that people don't pay so much attention to, such as the creation tools that they make, that they're very serious in fact. They just recently released Logic X, Logic 10, whichever we want to call it.
I'm an X guy. So
X. Okay, yeah. We'll go with X. I don't care too much, but and Final Cut and the iLife suite and the all that stuff. it just comes through in the things that they release and the effect that it seems to have on people. And they don't do things with your data that are malicious. They certainly don't appear to. They don't sell it, right? That's not their MO. It's not their business strategy.
Well, yeah, but neither does Google, really.
Well, don't they?
Well, I mean, do they? You know what I mean? It's not the same as, a magazine publisher selling their, subscription list to, I don't know, a telecom company. It's not like that with Google, or is it? I mean, it's not, right?
So, most of their revenue seems to be generated from their core business, which is search, right?
Yeah. And that's advertising, right? I mean, they basically make their money advertising, which, you see, and this is where I credit Google, and I've not heard this mentioned much, but the whole advertising side of things with Google was, they actually do advertising the right way, even if there is such a thing. Because, no, seriously, ads before Google online. Like, if you looked at, I don't know, Yahoo, when Yahoo was still a thing, before Google showed up, they had the worst banner ads you could think of. It was just, an eyesore most of the time. And that's one way to look at it. Sort of conversely to that, though. Yeah.
Not Apple. Google. Let's see. When would you say they really started to take off? I'd say it was around 99, 2000, roughly.
Thereabouts, yeah.
So, and when they really started to make a splash, it was huge, and everybody started using Google. And I remember there was quite a bit of an impact on Silicon Valley, where it seems like there was a gold rush startup mentality, where everyone looked at Google and said, okay, well, this whole, ad revenue thing seems to work really well, and maybe we can just grow first and ask questions later. So there was that impact. But on the other hand, Google actually did have it pretty well figured out fairly quickly, and actually did have a sustainable business model, whereas a lot of those startups that were influenced by them didn't so much.
Yeah, but do you see what I mean? I mean, they actually did stuff right in a different way, the same way Apple does stuff right in a their way, and that's where I don't get when Apple gets mentioned, when that hyperbole stuff gets talked about, right? So I just feel like Google gets left out, and I don't think they necessarily deserve to be left out.
I mean, where it all comes down to me for me is the results and the products that actually get released. And not to sort of flip around a Steve Jobs quote about Microsoft, but he once said about Microsoft, the problem with Microsoft is they just make third-rate products, Yeah. And I know that a lot of people really love Google. But at the time that Steve Jobs said that about Microsoft, a lot of people really loved Microsoft too, and that was not and he was in no position to really say that at the time, right? I mean, he was doing what he was doing next,
which was doing fine,
So he wasn't in that position. But we look back on it now and we say, wow, there's something. There's something to what he was saying, and he clearly had some pretty good ideas about where things should be as opposed to where they were. I think the way he saw the world at that point is, the computers had sort of entered the dark ages, from his perspective.
Yeah. But you see, now here's where my thing comes in, because I'm not, American or English, but I can actually speak English. Which is great if you love Apple stuff. But if you speak like most other languages, right, that's it, and you don't speak English, the Mac and iOS kind of just decrease in value. And the one thing Microsoft has done right since like Windows 95, basically, I don't know when all of the languages showed up, right? But like everything is translated, you know?
Sure.
And that, like, they poured so much into that's the main reason they got so big in enterprise. And you said a great thing in the last episode of the Menu Bar where you said, you know, where you just stated basically that they make all of their profit in enterprise.
Right.
And that doesn't surprise me at all because, you know, someone like a company in Slovenia or over here, right? Or I don't care, in Romania or whatever they want to, you know, use it as an example that just wants to use computers. They need the localization stuff and they need that stuff to be supported and all of that stuff, you know. And Microsoft built out this like network, which is kind of mind-boggling. I mean, they have like local offices basically in every country they do business in, right? And that, you know, an average consumer might not see that, you know. Somebody that just buys like an HP laptop for, you know, I don't know, 500 euros doesn't see that. But like any business that wants to work, that's like a, you know, I don't know, especially like in the 90s, that's all that mattered. You just had somebody to explain the stuff to you. And with the Mac, that's still not the case. You know?
I agree.
And when you said, you know, when Jobs said they make third-rate products, that might be true. And I sort of agree with that because, you know, just look at the way stuff from Microsoft looks like. But they put an extraordinary amount of energy in the localization stuff and all of that stuff. And that, you know, like until fairly recently was more important than, you know, the fonts being awesome.
So it's care along different dimensions.
Yeah.
So, you know, everything that Microsoft has done in enterprise, I think it's great. And even a lot of the stuff that they've done in consumer has been great. The problem for me with Microsoft is, and this could happen to Apple, you know, right now for what it's worth, but it seems like they, possibly because of the divisional structure of their company, it seems like they had a very difficult time seeing forward enough to, you know, iterate and evolve and learn for the future. You know,
yeah, I'll give you that. That whole, you know, corporate structure over there was insane. The silo sync was just, you know, it got to a point where I don't think like people that were in the next office over knew what the other people were doing, basically.
So, well, one of the crazy things about Microsoft to me is that they seem to be seemingly tone deaf to their own success. Like it's almost, and I think again it's because of the divisional nature of their company and the fact that you've got product teams competing with each other, as opposed to one overarching, you know, vision for the company. I think there is some of that, but most of it is in the enterprise side, unfortunately, and that's where you know, that's where most of, I don't know if it's where, it's where most of their profits come from. So it's interesting. Microsoft, one of the things that's been kind of going back and forth on my Twitter timeline lately is sort of a discussion about Metro.
Yeah,
and
modern UI, please, Zach. Right. Modern UI.
I'm calling it Metro.
Yeah, I'm the same. Every time I have to write a review of anything like that has Windows 8 on it, I just say Metro, basically, because it's just annoying. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No. So Metro, modern UI. I can't believe it. Don't they have enough money to? Never mind.
Yeah. Oh, the naming thing is just, they're all like every company. Just I don't even, you know. Yeah. Just let's forget that because that's going to be an hour there. So.
Yeah. So, but anyway, going back to Metro real quick. So what I meant by the fact that Microsoft doesn't seem to learn from their own success is why on earth did they make the bet? Let's see, when when the iPhone came out was 2007, right? And you had, I think, Windows 7 in the same year. I think that's right. But so Windows 7 was actually a really huge success. And actually at that time, I was becoming more of a Microsoft fan than anything. I was actually really impressed with what they had done improving on Windows Vista. You know, I just thought they did a great job, and I was really looking forward to future things from Microsoft for once. And the iPhone came out, and Microsoft just seemed to stall. They didn't do anything, right? Windows Mobile was, you know, they just left it alone, and then they barely iterated it into 6.5. And then the iPad comes out, and then we start to hear about Windows 8 and Metro. And what's interesting to me about Metro is that it's a complete and total break from the old design philosophy at Microsoft, and from the aesthetic and even from the software conventions. And I don't think absolutely everything about Windows was bad before. Like, to me, it seemed completely unnecessary to just throw away most of the past, right? And at the same time, bringing the past with you in a clunky, fragmented form with Windows 8, where you have two different sorts of desktops.
Yeah, well, two different operating systems, really. Yeah.
Right. You know, and to a consumer though, you're just, there's these two completely different environments that are sort of fighting with each other. And the interesting thing there to me is that why? Because what they did with Windows 7, from my perspective, and I think from a lot of people who were using PCs, felt that Windows 7 was actually pretty good in terms of usability and even aesthetically. Arrow, especially right now with what we're seeing with iOS 7, with transparency and all these new OS effects with animations and whatnot. A lot of that stuff was happening with Windows 7. It's just interesting to me that they were so successful with Windows 7 and then decided to kind of just burn it down and piss on it and do Metro instead. And so I agree with people that they needed to definitely break away from the past, but I don't think they needed to go quite so abrupt, which sounds crazy coming from an Apple guy, because most of the Apple people that I know are really, they think Metro is great and that, everything before sucked.
Yeah, which really isn't.
Right. And I actually have the complete opposite perspective. I really think that Microsoft is a company that has sort of failed to learn from their own success. And I don't know, a company that can't learn from its own success, I wonder how can they iterate going forward. So I wonder about their future. I don't know what they're going to do.
They're going to become IBM too. I think that's going to be it. Like, at some point it's just going to be enterprise stuff, and they're going to fade away from the consumer market, I think.
Sure, but then you look at the actual moves from the company, and so much of it is consumer facing.
Yeah, but that stuff has to work at some point.
And the thing is, I think they care deeply about consumer, and it's because, one, it's a huge opportunity, and who would want to let that go? And they had it before, so they ought to be able to have it again. I mean, so it makes sense that they're continuing to be focused there. But I also think they're continuing to be focused there because even in enterprise, we're starting to see shifts happen, right? Where more people are bringing their own devices to work. IT departments are starting to think a little bit differently.
Yeah, but you see,
so much more true in the English-speaking world.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear that. Yeah.
You see, that's where I can. You see, you all have this like blind spot to that when I listen to your guys talk.
I agree. I agree, and that's why I feel we should have more international dialogue.
Yeah, see, that's why I like Federico, because he just he points that stuff out.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. Although he didn't on our episode.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah, but you were all swooning around the apple, so that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, just let me make one more point with Windows 8, which I tend to agree with you. I think 7 is an awesome operating system. I truly believe that. I use it every day, basically, and it's kind of, it's the first Windows that actually worked and made sense, and, you can multitask properly and all of that stuff. But like I've been reviewing a lot of these hybrids, like Windows 8 hybrids, which is basically like a Windows 8 Ultrabook that you can detach the screen and it becomes a tablet.
Yeah.
And with that form factor, it almost makes sense. If you can actually just detach the screen and it becomes a tablet, it almost Windows 8 almost makes sense.
But it is almost.
Yeah, it's almost. It doesn't. Yeah, I know. The Surface Pro is like, I think that's what they wanted to make. That's the only the only one that actually works. The Surface Pro is the thing that they actually thought this is it, and then we'll let everybody else do their thing, and
I agree that it's the only one that works, but I don't know if that makes it good.
That's another thing. Yeah.
And that's, the real crux of their problem is not, I don't think it's as simple as, say, lowering the price point of the Surface Pro to the point that, that's their main focus. Then they still have the problem of you've got two different operating system environments.
Yeah, well, and the chips are still different, so, you can't have both the apps from one on the other and all of that stuff, so I don't know, it's a mess, basically.
It's a huge mess.
Yeah.
And even they didn't really know what they were doing exactly as they were announcing it. I remember when they announced the Surface RT, I reached out to someone from Microsoft on Twitter, and I just asked a simple question. Based on what you guys said, it's kind of confusing. Will Windows apps, prior Windows apps run on this thing? And he said, yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, but will they need to be recompiled? And he went a long time not answering, and he said, well, we covered this.
Yeah.
I said, no, you guys, this is why people are asking the question, is because you guys, but anyway, that's neither here nor there, but they're terrible at delivering a narrative to consumers as to what exactly they should expect, and probably because it's a terrible narrative to have.
Yeah. I just wish Sinofsky would have stayed somehow. Like, I think that guy was the only one that actually knew what he was doing over there. Even though Windows 8 was under him, but I figure if he left right after the keynotes, like, I don't think that was his baby, basically.
Yeah, who was the guy who was Jay Allard?
Oh yeah, the Xbox guy, the courier guy, right. Basically, yeah.
Yeah, and he had a lot to do with Metro too. I think he was also on the Zune project.
Yeah, but I think he left before. I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a Zune HD. Actually,
why?
I did. So here's the thing. So like, I'm known on Twitter as this just huge Apple fanboy, right?
Yeah.
I had a Zune HD, and to this day, I actually kind of miss it. It was one of the few areas where Metro actually made sense, and it was actually a really well designed piece of hardware. The problem is the Zune HD was pretty much what the very first Zune needed to be. By the time they got to the Zune HD, it didn't matter anymore.
Yeah, it was all over, basically.
Yeah. Microsoft. I mean, yeah, but let's see. So going back to Google.
You see, that's why I think what they did with Android is it borders on a miracle, basically. What Android is today, that should not have happened, if you ask me. What it started out as basically a competitor of the BlackBerry, and It was ugly for the first 4 years of its life until 4.0, basically. Well, 3.0, but 4.0 really,
And the way it improved and that whole Project Butter thing, which I thought, what the hell are you people talking about? It actually made, a world of difference.
So with Android, if we're talking broadly about Android as a singular entity, there's two different ways to sort of see that story. In one version, the way it started was an operating system meant to compete with everything that, current at the time, which was Windows Mobile and BlackBerry. And in fact, when Google purchased it, it was really meant to be a blow against Microsoft, who was really the only, at the time, if you were projecting out, it seemed like Microsoft was eventually going to have a total stranglehold on that market, just because it didn't seem like, RIM was going to iterate on the software side enough. It felt like, so Microsoft inevitably is going to own this space, and Apple certainly, they're not going to, maybe they'll do something, but it's certainly not going to be huge. At the time, it just it seemed crazy, right? So the way Android was initially positioned was, okay, so we're going to give the operating system away for free. So we're going to take away from Microsoft what they value most, which is their licensing. And that was brilliant. And it was a great plan. But then the iPhone came out. And suddenly lots and lots of changes needed to be made to Android. But the great thing is they did iterate it and they did change it, and it became more touchscreen friendly, and they got very aggressive about updating it. And I think, all the way up into this day, how often and how much they've managed to improve it is impressive. So, and that's one version of the story.
Okay, but now tell me the other one. Yeah, this is what I'm waiting for now.
the other version of the story is the one where Google has still categorically failed to figure out how to monetize this thing that they put out for free. So I tweeted this the other day, but I said something along the lines of, when Microsoft in the 90s was on top of the PC licensing market, they didn't feel a need to start making PCs. And if you think about this with Google, if it was true that Android is accomplishing all of the goals that Google has, why is it that the Nexus program exists, and why is it that they bought Motorola?
Yeah.
And why are they starting to build hardware? So, and that's great. I think it's all great, but there's a huge disconnect, I think, in the tech press, where we talk about Android as one conglomerate entity, and the only way to me that even makes any sense is if we're talking about it relative to what it's doing for Google. And any other way that we're going to talk about Android, you almost have to break it down in terms of the OEMs and what it's doing for them. In which case, we're talking primarily about Samsung.
Yeah. That's the way I see it as well.
Yeah.
But but I'm sort of becoming a champion of the Nexus program and stock Android and all of that stuff, because
sure, yeah,
but that's a sliver of the whole monster basically, and the monster still isn't making money, so
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm very skeptical of the entire situation, just because of how long it's taken Google to. Everyone's kind of going crazy praising them for the fact that they're starting to finally get design to some extent, and the ecosystem for Android is getting much better, sort of. The problem is that ultimately right now they still don't have the top tier app developers making Android first apps. And then another problem that they have is they've got a huge sort of media content ecosystem that no one uses or cares about.
Yeah, and it's not that huge.
Right.
Well, yeah. Again, that whole international blind spot you people have, but
No. So I was actually going to mention.
Oh, you're going to mention. Okay.
So they have a bunch of content in the U.S. which isn't getting consumed.
Yeah.
Even in the U.S., let alone all of the places where the content doesn't go. And there's areas where Google Play doesn't exist.
Yes, I'm from Slovenia, so
right. Yeah. Does Google Play not exist?
Well, you can't buy any of the hardware. The apps, right? Yeah, that works, but the hardware, yeah. The page does. It's not available in your country. I get one of those, so.
Yeah, so it's terrible.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is kind of.
But to me, it's just interesting because, again, in the tech press, the way we talk about Google tends to be very optimistically, and as if they're in more of a lead position than they actually are.
I'll agree with that. Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Particularly, I'll name drop here just this one. It's not too controversial, but The Verge, tends to a good example is they don't for some reason want to talk about things like Android security, which really kind of bugs me. I don't know if you remember when Phil Schiller tweeted that one tweet, "Be safe out there," and it was a link to a security firm's report on the sort of the state of security in the mobile market. And The Verge just sort of linked to it, made fun of it, and said, they linked to an article they had written the previous year, basically saying, well, Android is not any less secure than iOS for these reasons. And it just seems sort of crazy to me. I don't know. Have you done a quick search in the Google Play Store for?
Yeah, it's the Wild West over there. So I know what you mean. Yeah.
So there are apps. There's an app called Android Lost, which is a very popular app, which allows you to do things like intercept text messages, record calls remotely, wipe your phone remotely.
Yeah.
So and this is how much access that developers have to the.
Well, to be fair, you kind of need to let the app do that stuff, But yeah, I see what you mean. When a normal person, they just yes, okay, approve,
right.
Yeah, you get into that kind of territory. So.
Right. Well, so there's a way to think about this is if I know people around me who say for whatever reason just want to put tabs on my phone, and they have some kind of immediate access to my phone. Well, with an iPhone, you have to really kind of do some hacky stuff in order to get something like that accomplished. I'm pretty sure you could. But with an Android phone, all you have to do is get it for about 5 minutes, hook it up to your computer, get an app on there, disappear the app from the person's knowledge, and go to town with doing all this remote stuff.
Yeah, but we tried to do that at the magazine, right? And
did you?
Yeah, and you kind of know. I mean, that was I think a year ago, so things might have changed, but you still saw the app do stuff, so you'd notice it.
You'll notice it maybe if you're a user who goes into your task manager, for example.
That's true.
And a lot of those apps will send you notifications, but again, you just think about the possibility of being able to build a custom app that maybe goes a couple steps further than what's allowed into Google Play, and you tell the phone, you sideload the app, for example, and so I don't know. That's the security stuff that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah, that's fair.
So there just seems to be some amount of distortion when it comes to all things Android, particularly with the big tech websites. And it doesn't really matter too much, I guess. But it bugs me a little bit, I guess. I don't know.
So now that we've basically covered every technology company we sort of care about, excluding
Sure.
Amazon, but we'll save that for another day.
I have plenty I could say about Amazon, but
I'm the Amazon guy in the magazine, so trust me, we can have that conversation sometime.
Sure.
So we have to move on to the hardware and software you use. So,
Sure.
It's going to be on the hardware side. I'm guessing it's going to be boring, but
It's going to be very boring. Actually, It's not entirely boring. Actually, so I own a Kindle.
Which one?
I own the Paperwhite. Yeah, I don't use iBooks.
What? Yeah, well, that's actually understandable because iBooks kind of, okay.
Well, actually, so most of the Apple guys I know, they all use iBooks, and they get on my case for having a Kindle and using it. They're like, why are you doing this? You got an iPad, I've been a big fan of the Kindle since the very first one.
Yeah,
and,
same here.
Amazon's done a great job with all that stuff. But anyway, let's topic for another day. But so moving on to primary hardware that I use. I have a 2010 17-inch MacBook Pro that I do pretty much everything on. And that's mainly just stays hooked up to an external monitor on my desk. I usually I almost never take it anywhere anymore. It's pretty much just there.
It's a 17-inch laptop. That would be insane.
Right. No, it was a terrible idea actually. So, the reason it's 17 inches, I would never typically buy a 17-inch laptop, but it was sort of a situation where I was presented with a deal that was just too good to pass up from a friend of mine who kind of got bored with it very quickly. So
okay.
I got it pretty cheap.
Okay, that makes sense. All right.
Sure. Other than that, I have a iPhone 4S. I don't have a 5. And I have an iPad Mini. The LTE 32 gigabyte. And I actually do. I would actually almost say that the iPad Mini is like my primary computer, even over my iPhone and my Mac.
Really? Well, that's that's probably because you're still on the 4S. I just got this sense from the other people I talked to. When you get the 5 or the bigger Android phones, the tablets kind of fade a little in the workflow.
So. For me, it's actually just about. For me, the iPad Mini is like this perfect sort of in between everything, in between the laptop and a phone and everything else. Like it's got really great optimized for that screen size apps, and I love to use text editors and. Twitter apps and all the silly things that I do, typically with a computer. The thing is just so light, so portable. It's really not much of a bigger deal than even an iPhone to carry, really. I mean, it can't go in my pocket, of course, but it's not a big deal to carry around either. And it's got that LTE connection, so it's always online. It's like, I mean, I don't know. So there's Android people running around with 7-inch, phones. I'm running around primarily with this, this
if you could make,
Mini.
phone calls, it'd be a phablet, basically.
Sure. And I even explored that idea at one point. I seriously considered, I'm not really using my phone anymore. Maybe I should just not have a phone.
Don't be that guy. Just do not.
No, I haven't gone that far. But I make so few phone calls that I almost could,
Yeah.
I could just have a Bluetooth headset and just get calls over Skype and but no, I'm not gonna go that far. I'll stick to having a phone one way or the other. But there is a possibility that I just don't get an iPhone next, So I don't know. I don't know if that means getting. I don't think I'd get an Android phone, but I could almost. What's that tiny Lumia? That it's not running. It's not running Windows Phone. It's running something else.
Oh, it's probably S40. Oh, I know the one you mean. Yeah, it's not a Lumia. It's called something else, I think.
I think in the States it's still under the Lumia brand. I can't remember.
I think they're called Asha over here. Asha something or other. But yeah, I know which phone you mean, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of want something like that where it's just, basically like a glorified feature phone. Because again, I'm really not doing all that much from my phone anymore. I really do just carry my iPad mini with me everywhere.
Okay, so then I'm just gonna ask you about the iPad software. Like
Sure.
the stuff you actually use there. And I mean this sincerely, the stuff you actually use, not, the popular ones.
Well, so I'm just gonna look at my iPad here. I've got the main things that I tend to use, things that are like in my dock is, Tweetbot, obviously. It's my favorite, Twitter client.
Yeah, but you say obviously, like most of the people I talk to are like, they just started using the official Twitter client. It's insane how many people use it. I don't get it either, but yeah, okay, fine, go ahead.
So then there's, I actually, for my podcast client, I use podcasts.app. I don't use any of the, third-party clients. I use Apple's,
That's
podcast
insane.
app.
I don't understand that. But why?
For me, it's fast and it's simple, and I don't really care about show notes.
Just move on. I don't even, there's,
You're
I know there's rage in me now, and I just wanna, let's move on.
I could talk about how I miss the skeuomorphic.
Oh, I'm just gonna hang up now, so,
I love it. Okay, so, Byword is my favorite, text editor on the iPad. Just a really, really great, Markdown editor, has the best multi-Markdown preview. And I'm not really writing too much online these days, but that's probably going to change here pretty soon. So,
another blog or something else?
Something else.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Well, I can see you don't want to talk about it, but
Sure. There's all kinds of things kind of cooking between different podcasts that could potentially launch here pretty soon, and a writing project. I'll just say loosely.
Okay, that sounds mysterious enough, so I'll allow that. A writing project. That's okay.
But yeah, I mean those are really the main apps that I use. I tend to just keep the apps that I use frequently on my iPad. I try not to have a ton of stuff installed, Mm-hmm. I try not to have folders with hundreds of games and tons of utilities and productivity apps that I never actually use.
That's gonna get even weirder with iOS 7 now, because the folders are gonna have multiple screens. That's gonna go out of hand, I think.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about the multiple screens, because you can do crazy things like put one app in one folder. I mean, in one section of a folder, and then put one app in the next section of the folder. I just imagine what my kids are going to do with that. Totally rearrange everything.
Yeah, that's where the whole Android profiles would come in handy. They're just gonna mess everything up every time, probably.
Yeah, that is one kind of downside to iOS right now is
they need to do that. They need to get multiple users.
As great as that, I can't remember what it's called, but the restrictive thing where you can, or guided access.
Yeah, guided access. Yeah,
I use that, but it just pisses my kids off
because they can't do everything.
Well, they just go to click the home button and they're like, it doesn't work, so they throw the iPad. Which maybe that's just sort of a temper problem with my children, but I can understand. It worked before.
Now it doesn't work. Yeah,
sure. So yeah, I do feel like there needs to be a better kid friendly mode on iOS devices.
So and then on the Mac, I usually just ask about the browser, but I'm guessing you're on Safari, right?
I am on Safari, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't...
You will eventually. You will eventually.
I don't prefer really anything about Chrome.
I'm telling you, you will eventually. We were all like that, but
Yeah, I don't know.
There's a reason Google left WebKit. They are the only people that know what they're doing there. Yeah. Did you read the Siracusa post? The one where he had the graphs of commits, like different companies to the...
Oh,
like
sure, yeah.
That was the greatest article ever written. Like, that's why Chrome is the best. Seriously, I just gave up on Safari.
Chrome is definitely faster.
Which kind of matters.
Yeah, no, it does matter, but these days we're talking about difference of milliseconds between browsers.
I still notice it. I still kinda. It's
but for me, ultimately, like Chrome just doesn't. It still to this day doesn't feel like a native or OS X app to me. Like it just. I don't know.
I get that. Yeah.
It feels jarring every time I have to use it, and sometimes I do use it to test, cross test websites and things like that. So,
but you'll come around, come to the dark side, and all of that stuff. But it's gonna happen eventually, basically. Okay, and then my last question, which is always the same. Like, if you had to name a piece of hardware or something physical that you thought was kind of made for you, that you still have, you might not have anymore, but have fond memories of it, what would that one thing be?
That's a tough question.
Yes, it is.
It's a great question, though.
I'm making you pick one, and it has to be something physical. It can be, sunshine and rainbows, but it has to be something you can hold in your hand.
If a physical, but not technology related?
It can be anything. I've gotten room heaters for an answer, so, and that's not a joke, but, just saying.
I'm gonna go with something completely like left field and say, the Sega Dreamcast.
That was an awesome console.
It really was.
It really was. If that thing had more games, that would have been.
I know. I totally agree, and and the Dreamcast wasn't even what killed Sega. It was so many things.
Yeah, I'm just so afraid we're going to be saying that about Nintendo because they're my guys. But I'm just I have nightmares about that.
Yeah, that definitely keeps me up at night.
Yeah, because I'm afraid I'm going to have like the same conversation about the Wii U in like 5 years. And I do not want that conversation. I just want them to keep doing stuff.
Yeah, I think we all do, including Federico.
I know. Yeah, if I get him on here, that's probably all we're gonna talk about. Like it's gonna be.
Yeah, it was so tempting when we had him on when he started talking about Nintendo to just like open that up into another topic. But we knew it was gonna go in.
Yeah. I don't care about iOS automation. Basically, I'm gonna talk about Nintendo. That's what I'm gonna do. That's it.
I'll look forward to that episode.
Yeah, but that's it, basically, Zach. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna do a Hurley, and I'm gonna tell you to tell people where they can find you online. So.
All right. So you can find me on Twitter at Zac Cichy, ZCICHY, because that's a very difficult thing to try to.
Yeah, you're talking to me about names, so Yeah.
Right, and then I do a podcast with Andrew J. Clark called The Menu Bar, and you can find that at themenubar.net.
Yeah, which is a great podcast, and I am a subscriber. So
thank you.
That's why you're here, basically.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I saw you on Twitter here and there, but the podcast kind of, I said I have to get like at least one of you guys on. I'm gonna get Andrew on, but the only reason you were first was because I knew how to calculate the time difference. Because I don't even like.
I assumed it was because I had more Twitter followers.
Okay.
Sure.
We can do that. We can do the popularity thing. That can be the official version. I'm fine with that. But like, I just couldn't be bothered. Like, I have this. I'm gonna send you a link to a site that does calculates time differences. It's an ugly site. It's called like happyzebra.com or something.
There are so many of these things, and they're all terrible for one reason or the other.
Yeah, but this one is the least terrible I found. So I'm gonna put the link into Skype. But again, thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
Same here. Tole je bila 42. epizoda Aparatusa. Zeka najdete na Twitterju pod @ZCICHY. Jaz sem na Twitterju @anzet. Feedbacka sem vedno vesel, tako da če hočete karkoli povedati, mi težite na Twitterju oziroma prek maila anze@aparatus.si. In tako, kot sem na začetku rekel, če imate možnost, podprite Aparatus, da bom lahko še več tega počel. Evo, to je naslednjega tedna to. Čau.